What's up, guys? It's Ben with 2020 election predictions. And on this day, we are 10 weeks out from election day. It's a Tuesday right now. We have 70 days, 10 weeks, 7 days each, 7 times 10, 70 days. So we are in the closing stretch to the election. So right now, 70 days out, I want to give an updated projection on where I think that the electoral map stands right now. I think there's a lot of room for this to change. But right now, I'm going to bring 70 days out what I think the election day results will be. So I want to preface this by saying that I'm not going to go exactly where the polls are right now because I think that there's going to be a lot of movement. And also, I don't necessarily think that all the polls are going to be 100% accurate this far out. So I'm going to account for any like bias or any error that I think is in the polls right now. So just starting out, we see that the Republican candidate Donald Trump has 131 electoral votes and that Joe Biden has 212. And I included the safe characterization, which is 12 plus, and the likely characterization, which is between 5 and 12. I think South Carolina, Alaska, and Montana are going to be in that 10 to 12 range. So I don't necessarily think they're going to be competitive at all. But however, I do think that Donald Trump is going to underperform his 2016 performance there. Not that it will matter in the grand scheme of things. Now, I think Iowa will actually be between like 5, 6, or 7 points. I have it to the right of Ohio, even though that they're very similar in terms of their demographics and geographical region. Colorado, New Mexico, Virginia, I don't want to comment on too much. However, I just think that they're trending leftward, and I really don't think that Trump really has a chance in these states, and I don't really think he's going to make a play for them that much. And one place that you can't really see right now, but I think that Maine is also going to be a likely Democratic state. Hillary Clinton won it in 2016, and I don't really see Donald Trump trying to make a play for it. I don't think he's going to be spending money there at all. So first up, I kind of just want to move left to right. So I'm starting the state of Nevada. I think Nevada will be a lean Democratic state. Typically, the polls are actually skewed in favor of the Republicans. So this was a state. If you look at the final Nate Silver 2016 forecast, I guess it did have it narrowly going to Hillary Clinton, but they had states that Donald Trump won even more in Hillary Clinton's favor. So, and also in the 2018 midterms, the polls had it a lot closer than it ended up actually being. I do think that Donald Trump is actually doing better than he is with Hispanics than he was in 2016. So I think these aspects will kind of counteract each other because the polls right now still have Biden in the lead. So I don't expect Trump to have like a great shot at winning this state, but still, if Donald Trump in his best case scenario, he would for sure win Nevada. So next up, moving on to Arizona. I think Arizona right now tilts very, very narrowly to the Democrats and Joe Biden. The reason why I say that is because the Senate race. If Mark Kelly were not the Democratic nominee for Senate in this race, I think that Donald Trump would hold a slight advantage. But Arizona has been changing rapidly in terms of its demographics. The Democrats have their voter registration team that their numbers are a lot greater than the newly registered voters. And still, there are a higher number of registered Republicans in the state of Arizona, but I mean, there's still a little bit of time to register the vote. And I think it'll be very, very interesting to see because I think Arizona has the potential to be the closest state. The Democrats won it statewide in 2018, but Donald Trump won it by about 3 points in 2016. So we will see if the Democrats can kind of overcome that 3% margin in just a 4-year cycle on the presidential level. Texas, there's been a lot of talk about can Texas turn blue this turnaround. I think we've seen some recent polls that have suggested otherwise. I'd say earlier in the cycle in May, June, and July, we saw some polls where Biden was even leading, still within the margin of error. However, I've seen a couple of polls that have like Donald Trump up by 5 or 7 points. I think that John Cornyn, he's going to win this state probably by a likely margin, so over 5 points. And I think this will help Trump actually statewide. I do think it could potentially go kind of into the tilt Republican margin. But I really don't think that the Biden campaign will be focusing much energy on here because I think they're really just concerned about a win and not kind of like an over the top performance there. So next on, moving from west to east, we have Minnesota. And Minnesota has changed a lot recently. So this is an update from my last forecast. Right now, I literally think Minnesota is a tilt Democratic state. And the reason why this might surprise you is because I've had it as lean, and I think I had it as likely as one point. But I mean, in the 2016 results, I mean, Hillary Clinton only won the state by 1.5 points. A lot of people don't like to, or like Minnesota was not as much as a focus, I would say, post election when you're looking back because, I mean, Donald Trump didn't win it, but he did win Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. However, looking at the polls, it honestly appears that Minnesota is going to be more competitive than Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. Do I trust the polls in the Rust Belt right now completely? No. I mean, I learned my lesson in 2016. However, I mean, just looking at polls, I mean, Minnesota could potentially just turn into a toss up. I mean, there's a poll that had it even. There was a poll that had Biden up by 1 or 2 points, and I mean, really, and I don't want to speculate as to why, but I mean, it could have been because of the riots in Minneapolis. So who really knows what's going to happen there? Next up, going to Wisconsin. With Wisconsin, I'm very torn on. I think it's between a lean and tilt characterization. Right now, I just want to have it as a tilt characterization because of the recent developments in Wisconsin. I just saw on Twitter there's a little bit of civil unrest, so I think this could potentially change the landscape of the race. However, I still have it as tilting towards Biden. The polls have Biden up by like 6 or 7 points, but I do think they will definitely tighten come election day. So next up, going to Michigan. I think that Michigan right now is that lean characterization. And if the Trump campaign pulls out completely out of Michigan permanently, I could even see Michigan going into the likely characterization. However, I do expect the RNC to put money into Michigan because there is a potentially competitive Senate race there too with John James, so I think is a very strong candidate for the Republicans. And while the incumbent or the Democrat is an incumbent, I don't necessarily think he's one of this big name, strong incumbent. So I think that the Republicans would be wise to put money in this race, even if it was at the Senate level, and this might help Donald Trump too. Moving on to Ohio, I think Ohio is a lean Republican state for sure. Even though some polls have showed it being competitive, the polls showed it being very competitive too. I mean, like Donald Trump only had a 64% chance of winning, and if we look to the actual results, he won this state by about 8 points, which is very significant. I think that Joe Biden will do better than Hillary Clinton did in 2016, but I still think that Donald Trump will not have too much trouble winning this state. Okay, so now moving on to the state of Georgia. I think that Georgia right now is a tilt Republican state. I've had this as a lean Republican state in the past. However, I just think it's going to be very, very competitive. Georgia is moving leftward, I think, and it has a very high African American population, the most out of some of kind of a lot of these southern states. And I think there's going to be a lot of energy in the black community to vote. And although Donald Trump kind of won it by like a 5 point margin, which we kind of consider a lot, I think this could very easily be turned into a 1 or 2 point margin. That's what would characterize it in the tilt category. Next up, going to North Carolina. I think that North Carolina right now is a tilt Republican state. The polls had kind of Biden up by kind of like a 2-3 point margin, but now they kind of evened up and have even given Trump an advantage. Trump won the state by 3.5 points in 2016, and I expect him to probably just like win this state by like even less than a point in 2020. But I'm going to be looking very closely at the Senate and governor's race because I think these two races can only hurt Trump, especially the governor's race. So we will see about that. And before I get on to the rest of the map, we see I have 218 for Trump, 265 for Joe Biden, so it's still a very competitive race. And one thing I just want to say, if you have not subscribed yet, please do. just hit the red button right here. It really helps me out and it keeps you up to date with all my new videos. And I will be coming out with a video every single day until the election. So that's 70 new videos that you will not want to miss out on for sure. Okay, so next up, I'm going to move to Florida. I also consider Florida a tilt Democratic state. I've been very surprised out of the polls out of Florida. Typically, the senior votes, if you're 65 or above, tends to lean towards the Republicans. Donald Trump won the 65 plus voters by 7 points nationwide, and in the state of Florida, it was by I think like 13 or 14 points. Typically, a lot of retirees move to Florida to retire. It's very sunny, nice weather. However, these voters have been turning on him in particular, and I think the Biden campaign. I've seen some of their ads. They're making a play for these voters, and I think a lot of it has to do with Trump's coronavirus response. And the polls have had Biden up in Florida 5-6 points, which is really kind of unheard of. In a race like this. I do think it will tighten up, but I really think unless the polls demonstrate that Trump is within 2 or 3 points, like Rick Scott and Ron DeSantis were in 2018, very, very narrowly won. If the polls have Biden up by an average of 4 or more, I really don't think he has a shot. He can win the state, and I still have it as tilting towards Biden. And the reason I have it as tilt and not lean is because Florida is always close, regardless of what the polls say. So I think the polls might have it as a not as close as a race as I think it will end up being. And so you see that puts Biden's over the top. So right now I think that Biden very narrowly will win the election. But you see we already have 4 tilt states. And I'm going to add a 5th because I think Pennsylvania, with its rural populations, will be like Wisconsin. And I think that the Trump campaign will make a huge play for Pennsylvania just because of its 20 electoral votes. I mean, I think the Biden campaign definitely will make a huge play for it, but I think both campaigns will pour a lot of money into it. So, like, I think that a lot of the voters who voted for Trump in 2016 will stick with him. And I think that Biden's going to try to make a play, but I really don't think he's going to gain a lot of those Trump voters. But I think it will be enough right now for him to win the statewide. And the next up, going to New Hampshire, I think it's going to be lean Democratic. It was the closest state in terms of raw votes in 2016. But I mean, Trump doesn't need this state. I don't really see him investing that much in it, and his disapproval in the state of New Hampshire is pretty large. Going on to the congressional districts, I think Trump is going to win the state or the second district in Maine. I think it's going to be a tilt characterization. And moving on to Nebraska, I think this is going to be a tilt Democratic characterization just because I think Trump is going to lose some of the suburban vote. So right now, as you can see, is 219 to 319. So I think I'm projecting a Joe Biden victory, albeit very closely because we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 tilt states that really could go either way. So I think this election is very far from being over. And one thing I want to note is that on election day in 2016, Nate Silver gave Donald Trump a 28.6% chance to win. And this is what happened. Donald Trump won with 306 electoral votes. He didn't win the popular vote, but he won the Electoral College, what mattered. Right now, Nate Silver's podcast gives Trump a 27% chance to win, so just like a 1.6% decrease. But Trump could very well do this again. And also looking at the betting odds, we've seen that Biden was up ahead a lot, but we've seen that Trump has come back in a large margin. And if this trend continues, that we're going to see Trump ahead. And I've said numerous times that I think the betting odds are going to be a more accurate indicator than the polls in 2020. So I really hope y'all like this video. Please subscribe if you haven't already, because I'm going to be posting a new video every single day coming up to the election. I think I'm going to do a special where I go state by state. So definitely stay tuned for that. And if you are subscribed, please hit the bell notification so you can be one of the first to comment, like, and see my new videos. So thanks, guys.